And we are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Geeking Out with. Um, yeah, this is my new little setup, a little premiere. Actually premiered it last night on Nate's show, but it's still in work in progress. I'm getting things sorted out as far as how I want to set it all up and everything. And then once I do that, then I'll of course I'll probably do like a little room tour video and stuff. But we're not here for that tonight. Tonight we are here to geek out. And my guest tonight is one of my favorite guests that we've interviewed on the live show. His name is Bobby. It's his channel is Sequential Artifacts by Robert A Emmons Jr. And if you guys are not hip to that or sub to him, man, you should be, because he the videos he puts out, I love them, man. I love watching them. It really makes me strive to want to be make better content and better videos and stuff. But without further ado, let's bring him out and see what he wants to geek out about. Hey, Bobby.
Hey, how are you?
Good, buddy. Good.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Rich. I mean, I'm not a very good geek, I guess, because if I were, I would have solved all the technical problems in advance. Until we experienced like 5 minutes before the show. Oh, my cat just knocked something over. One.
We'll we can work through. Make whatever whatever we have to deal with. We'll get through it, buddy.
All right.
But yeah, this is thanks for doing this. I like I said, I like getting people on here and letting them geek out about whatever they choose to, no matter what the topic may be. And but yeah, well, before we do that, let's say hi to the chat real quick and let everybody kind of muster in here. And let's see, we got K Munin. Say K Munin, buddy. And let's see, we got old Mr. Robbie Joseph. Glad you're here. Can't have a show without Robbie. And then you got my sweetheart, Adam.
Hey. Cats. Does anybody else have a cat around here?
And then we got Mark. Hey, Mark, buddy. And let's see here. We got AG, and then archivist, a Rift. Ad Rift is here. Love it.
He's a bit of Rift. I was hoping Jason would be here. He had a great geeking out, and so I felt I gotta live up to his presentation, which was fantastic. And I thought to myself, should I sign homework too, like Jason did? That's kind of fun. But I do have
you could have, yeah.
I do have a which will fit the topic. I do have an interactive cold opening when we're done here that we're going to start with.
Okay. Well, let's tell the folks what you chose to geek out about.
Okay. So I got a lot of interests, like many of us do, right? And I thought, it could we're all geeking out about comics all the time, and I could have done that. Right. I think maybe not as good as some people. Adam's geeking out was great. He has great stuff to share, and that was awesome. But when I when I saw Jason, when I saw Arcus the Drift, and I was like, okay, he kind of went outside the realm, but I think still connected to comics fans. And I thought, I love movies like Jason. I could geek out about movies. I'm a big tabletop gamer. I could have geeked out about that, and we'll actually touch on that a little bit. I've been a Dungeons and Dragons player for about 35 years with the same guys. Could have geeked out about that.
That's for sure, yeah.
But I decided on something else. And before I say what it is, we're actually going to jump right into it. And you're going to be the test subject here. Okay. You ready, Rich?
Yep.
Okay. You climb up the tree right behind Michelle. In an instant, The wolves are below you. They leap up against the tree trunk. You and Michelle are trapped. There is nothing to do but wait. Hours later, when darkness begins to fall, the wolves are still there. Some of them are napping. One of them quietly licks his paws. Another howls mournfully, while a third wolf sits motionlessly, staring up at you. You huddle against the cold through the long, dark night. The early morning light reveals no sign of the wolves, and you're eager to be down from the tree and on your way. Shall we continue, asks Michelle, or wait a couple of hours to make sure they are gone? So, Rich, if you say, let's go now, we're going to turn to page 100. If you say, let's wait a while, we're going to go to page 101.
Oh, man.
What do you want to do? Do you want to go now, or do you want to wait a while?
Let's go now.
Yeah, let's go now. Let's go to page 100. You climb down the tree, moving as silently as you can. Michelle follows. You stand there a while, ready to climb back up any second. Let's go, you whisper. You have almost reached the shallow stream at the edge of the forest, where you hear once again the mournful howling of the wolves. Michelle starts to run toward the stream. You follow close behind, but now you see them, at least a dozen gray wolves running along on either side of you, closing in. This time, there are no trees to climb, Rich. You grab a stick to use them as a weapon, but there are too many wolves, and they are hungry. ... The end. Thus, you died, Rich. You died in the Forbidden Castle, which is, what is it, number 14 in the Choose Your Adventure series. This is of the original series. So what I thought I would geek out about is Choose Your Own Adventure. And kind of more broadly, sort of the history of interactive storytelling, and then kind of get to the Choose Your Own Adventure book, which I would think that many of the people our age have experience with or even fans of. Did you read the old Choose Your Own Adventure books when you were a kid?
Yeah, I did. I remember those. Those are pretty cool. Always liked those.
Yeah, I remember when I was in fourth grade, my crew that I play Dungeons and Dragons with now, that's how far back some of us go, like fourth grade. This is actually one of my oldest friends. In fourth grade, my friend Ross set out about to write his own Choose Your Own Adventure novel. He barely remembers this. I remember the name of it. It was called The White Wyvern, and it was about this white dragon that you were trying to escape from. And because in my mind, he was like a total legend for for attempting to write a Choose Your Own Adventure story in the fourth grade. So I just want to, what's this, Jason? I love Choose Your Own Adventure. I was hoping Jason would be a fan. So, I know how many of these, go as kind of a sort of a free flow show, share and talk, but I kind of wanted to show a bunch of sort of backstory stuff and then share some contemporary stuff. If that's okay. For those that are here, I thought I could just, share my screen and go for it, but that didn't turn out to be as
it's not working out
easy as we thought. So I'm going to sort of do the old hack, which actually I never thought of this until I saw Garage Geek. I don't know if he was here. I was hoping he would be in here because he's a big book guy, and I've never seen him talk about Choose Your Own Adventure. But I saw him on his channel on one of his Friday night things where he just where he would just show he just showed his iPad screen and I was like, you know what, we'll just we'll just hack it like that.
We'll make it work.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, well, I should say too, this is passionate to me because I'm a big fan. I was a reader as a kid, but so some of you may or may not know, I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I've made 2 documentary films that are actually interactive Choose Your Own documentary films, which I'll talk about. So it's something I'm interested in as a maker, but I also teach a class at the university where I'm a professor, and the class is called Choose Your Own Adventure. And it's my favorite class to teach. The kids love it. And I talk about sort of the history of branching narratives or interactive storytelling, and then they make their own project. And I remember some years ago, I love to share this clip. I'm going to share it here. And I share it with the students because to me, at least for a while, if you wanted to know if something was in the zeitgeist, if something was like, mega popular culture, you knew it was if it was, on Family Guy. And I love this clip from Family Guy.
Should I follow the knight into the dungeon or should I go back the way I came? Yeah, I'll follow the knight. Page 37, page 37. I mean, go back the way I came. Look, I didn't take my hand off the page. You've seen it, Lois, right? You've seen my hand on the page.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And like that, I remember that was like such a part of the experience as a kid, right? Like in the front of the book, if you've ever read a Choose Your Own Adventure book, there's always early on a warning page, that says, this isn't read. You don't read this like regular books. You don't read straight through, and you cannot turn back. Right?
Yeah.
Your path that you chose is your path you chose. But we always did. If we died, like because the wolves ate us, you would go back. So I love to show that a clip in my class. But and so for my students, they often think that some of them are because these books have been reprinted a number of times, in the 90s and again in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I love the old originals. The illustrations are just so much better than the modern ones, I think. But a lot of times it's the same story reprinted, but then there are some new publishers too. And students think, these are the first interactive stories. But interestingly, in my research, what I found is actually the first interactive story that I found goes back to 1930, actually, to this novel called Consider the Consequences. It was a novel from 1930. And I think it's the earliest interactive written story. And it was a romantic novel, actually, that was published. And it had 43 different endings. And the way it worked is you would first, it was made primarily for young girls, right? And you would first play as Helen, right? So you would read Helen's story. And then you would decide if you were going to if you were going to date two guys, like Chad Saunders and, Jed something. One of these sort of early super, 1930s white bread kid names. But there was a map inside of the different choices, and this is sort of the standard branching narrative. You go this way, then you get these two choices. You go this way, you get these two choices. But this is 1930, which is super super early for this kind of thing, and surprises a lot of my students. In 1969, there was a novel. Some people might be familiar with this, called State of Emergency. This is sort of the next leap forward. Comes in 1969. There was this novel called State of Emergency, which calls itself the first do-it-yourself book. And interestingly enough, you play there's this government called Mikado, and the reader is actively trying to develop this government and move it forward against sort of this dictatorship inside. But that comes in 1969. But those are really the earliest experiments in Choose Your Own Adventure for adults, right? That I found. After that, most of it comes for the most popular audience, and that would be kids at first. In fact, this is one of the more interesting. Interesting. This is one of the things I think about, and think this is really pertinent for us as comic readers, right? We read this thing that we experienced when we were young, when we were kids, right? And for a long time, there was a stigma on, at what point do you stop reading comics, right? And then comics but all the while there was like underground comics and graphic novels that were not for young kids, but there was still always this stigma that comics were for kids. But I have a running joke always, especially when I talk about comics in my class, and that's like, I go to the comic book store every Wednesday. I can't tell you the last time I saw a kid in a freaking comic book store. They're trying to get them in all the time, but I rarely see a kid in the comic book store. That's, but so much like comics had that stigma, which I think has dissipated a lot. And in my opinion, I'd be curious to hear what readers have to say. And stop me if I get too long-winded, Rich, and anything that I'm talking about or boring.
No,
but I actually have a thought or a theory that part of the allowance that has been made for people of all ages to read comics, and there's not stigma as much, I think a lot of that is owed to movies, right? And how these properties have become these massive movies that are not really a subculture like comics always were, but we're our mainstream culture, like superhero movies. And so now it's these things that are worth and make millions and millions of dollars and really are the stuff of, like, you know, not just kids anymore. So anyway, much like comics and that stigma, Choose Your Own Adventure has, interactive novels have had a stigma. And so we don't really get very many as adults. And in fact, there's a graphic novel line that does it that is for kids, not very good. There's only one, and I'm going to show it today, that I know of that, you know, isn't just like a kid's book. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But the genre really took off because of children, right? And one of the very first ones that resembles the Choose Your Own Adventure that we know comes in 1945, and it's this book called Treasure Hunt. And it looked very much like the Choose Your Own Adventures that we knew as a kid, right? So you would read a paragraph and it would have an illustration, and then you would have a choice here. I don't know if you can quite make that out. You probably can.
Yeah.
But, you know, you would read a passage, there'd be an illustration, and you'd have a choice to make, much like we know Choose Your Own Adventure today, right? Here's another page from that.
That's awesome.
And that was called Treasure Hunt. Yep. So, you know, the children's book really is what allowed Choose Your Own Adventure to take off. I don't know if anybody out there recalls that book, but here's another advance that came in 1967 called Lucky Less. And this was an experiment in a branching out. This is a bigger book that is spread open, so you can see the cover is around.
Big wraparound cover. That's awesome.
But it wasn't. That was a one-off book too. It wasn't until the early 70s when a British company published these books here. They were called the Tracker Book Series, and this Mission to Planet L is one of these books. They were sort of long books, and these were very popular, and they ran from 1972 to 1980.
That's cool.
And it's right around that time in the late 70s that these two guys come into the picture. And this is Edward Packard and R.A. Montgomery. And these are the guys who eventually invent the Choose Your Own Adventure book as we know it. Curiously enough, people probably saw recently in social media, R.A. Montgomery is the grandfather of David Cornsweet, the most recent Superman. I think it's his grandfather, his uncle. Yes, that sort of came out in the on the internet all over the place. And Cornsweet,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
If you might not know, he's a local guy from where I am down here. I'm in New Jersey, but I'm right over the bridge from Philly. So
I got him right there. He's right there.
Yeah, there he is. Yeah. So he's a local guy, David Cornsweet. So he's related to R.A. Montgomery, who's responsible for the earliest. It was actually Edward Packard, though, wrote this book called Sugarcane Island, which was sort of the proto Choose Your Adventure book. And that was in he wrote it in 1969, but it wasn't published until the mid 70s. And he published it under a press that was a book press that was owned by Montgomery. That's how he became, that's how they knew each other. And so Montgomery was fascinated by this idea, and he wrote his own Choose Your Own Adventure. His first one was called Journey Under the Sea. Both of these books appeared under that other press, Montgomery's own press. They were remade for the Choose Your Own Adventure series in a minute, as we'll get to, but they published them independently, but they did well. So they went out searching for a publisher who might take this under their wing, and they found that publisher in Bantam Books. And so one of the things that I really want to share that is one of my prized possessions is this is comic books are part of what we would call like sort of ephemeral culture. I always tell my students, I'm like, do you realize like when comic books were first made, these things were meant to be read, handed off, thrown away. They didn't think these weren't things that were meant to last or that were going to be collected. Only the smart people held on to that, and that's why they're worth so damn much money now. But they were part of what was ephemeral culture that wasn't meant to last and often gotten rid of, right? So, my graduate advisor in college, I had to hear him rifle off the list of his comic books that his mom threw away, every all the great Marvel books that like Amazing Fantasy, like all the great Marvel books he had, his mother threw away. But one of my prized possessions, I'm going to back up for this, is this right here. And this is an original, I don't know if you can hear me. This is an original this is an original book stand that was made for the Bantam Books that would have been on a shelf or and the books would be lined up here to sell them in here. And I found there was a guy at a flea market who had two of these old bookstore. They were in the back and he found them. And this cost me $10, but like, this is the kind of shit I love that I collect stuff like this all the time. And I think this is what we do as comic book people, right? Too.
Yeah.
Somebody, I can't remember. Oh, it was Archivist Drift, and all the people who like him who work to preserve and restore comics really is to,
that thing's in great shape too, man.
Yeah, they're preserving culture, and when we buy these things, that's what we're doing. That's why I think that work is so important. They get their books published, and Bantam publishes almost 200. I think it's like 180 something volumes of Choose Your Own Adventure. So they were quite successful, and there were a number of them. And then they led the market. There were other books I'm sure we know of, that have also made Choose Your Own Adventure. That also made the interactive fiction books, but the Choose Your Own Adventure line is the most popular. Here's some of my favorites that I have that I collect. Oh, this is the very first. This was number one in the series when Bantam decided to publish. The first one they published was The Cave of Time, and this is my favorite for me because while I didn't get that, this first came out I think in 1979. I didn't have it at the time. I must have gotten it sometime later. And this isn't my original copy. I probably gave that to somebody else. This is this is from 1982. That seems about right. And this is the 18th printing of this book, the 15th printing of this, right?
Wow.
In 1982. And this was the very first book, The Cave of Time, my favorite. That I like.
I wished I could remember. I cannot remember what the ones I've read before. It was probably even Bantam because it looked those covers are very familiar looking to me, man.
Yeah, I mean these probably would have been it. If you were young, this is what it was. Deadwood City was another popular one that I liked of mine. This is why I was hoping, when I watch Garage Geeks channels, he's always showing old paperbacks. I love that.
Heck yeah, man.
Inside UFO 50/40. These covers are just fantastic.
Those are awesome. Yeah.
Underground Kingdom. These are some of my favorites. This one didn't come. This one came out I got this one later on just as a curiosity. But this one came out, I think maybe in '89 or something like that. But I love the title, You Are a Millionaire. And those were great. I talked about, I'm going to get into some other types of interactive fiction in a second. But I talked about that I'm a big time tabletop gamer.
Yeah.
And Choose Your Own Adventure has actually published 2 tabletop gaming versions of 2 of my favorite books as well. One is War with the Evil Power Master. So this is a tabletop game that uses the narrative of the book and creates some new story conventions. Use sort of cards to move through it, but then each one has its own mechanic. about how to play the game. And another great novel this was House of Danger.
Okay.
So these are 2 tabletop games that are based on the books that are quite fun. So when I teach my Choose Your Own Adventure class, we actually play these in class. So, when I tell my students, like, yeah, we're going to read Choose Your Own Adventure books, we're going to play some games, they kind of go wild for that shit. So, I always thought when I was a kid, I always thought, like, man, this is such a great thing. Why isn't there more of this?
Right.
And I remember there was I remember when this next thing came out, which I'm going to show here. I'll play a second of this. Some of you might recognize this.
You're being controlled by someone on Netflix. What is Netflix? Is it a planet?
I don't know. Is it some sort of future entertainment thing?
Like a computer game?
I don't know.
So
21st century.
This takes place in the 80s, and it's a Netflix film called Bandersnatch. Have you seen it or heard of it, Rich?
No.
So it was Netflix's first foray into an interactive film. So you watch this movie Bandersnatch, which is about video game designers who are designing this game called Bandersnatch, which is, if you're a Lewis Carroll fan, that will make sense to you. And in it, he realizes he's in a movie series. He's in a TV movie by Netflix, and the psychiatrist is like, "You're telling me you're in Netflix?" But I remember I showed that to my kids, this interactive, when it came out some years ago. Maybe it's been 8-9 years now. And my one daughter, when she saw it, she said to me, "Dad, why doesn't every movie do this?" Like, she was blown away by the idea that you could watch a movie and choose how you want it to go.
Man, I should have watched that. That'd have been awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's still on Netflix. They experimented with other interactive stuff after that. Like Bear Grylls had a whole interactive series where, like, he's in the outback and you decide which way he goes and he has to do survival techniques. But they pulled all their interactive stuff off because they were going through a lawsuit with, the Choose Your Own Adventure people. But the only thing they kept on is Bandersnatch. It's still on there. You can still watch it, at least when I checked last spring.
I'll have to check it out and see what's on there.
It's on there. It's pretty clever. And when I show it to my students, we watch it in class and we, quote unquote, play it in class, and they really love it. But when she brought that up, I thought to myself, yeah, why isn't there more like this? And then it got me into looking at what came before. Now, I knew of a couple of interactive film stuff, but I didn't know of this movie that I'm about to show a clip from. So another thing we all might be familiar with, if you're of my age, which now I'm a half century old. If you're 50, raise your hand.
Yep.
Rich, you're probably, 39 now, I think, right?
Yeah. Somewhere in there.
You might still, if you're my age, remember looking at Super 8 films when you were a kid, or your parents taking these things before video cameras.
Oh, yeah.
We still had and took Super 8 film when I was a kid. My aunt was big on it, and we would watch stuff back on the projector.
Yep.
And before our time, people could get, little Super 8 movies at home, which I collect those kind of things. And people might remember Castle Films, who produced all kinds of Super 8 films. And that was made by a producer named William Castle. Well, in 1961, he was a big-time B-movie producer. He created a film called Mr. Sardonicus, which allowed audiences to choose between 2 endings in this movie. And audience members would use these glow-in-the-dark thumb cards, the thumb up or thumbs down cards, and they would hold them up. And here's a clip from the trailer of this film called Mr. Sardonicus. So I want to show this trailer clip and then a clip of William Castle talking about this interactive film. Now, remember, this is 1961. So this would have to be done by a studio in the audience. This is like of the time of like smell-o-vision and, that kind of shit where they're trying to really sensationalize. So let me tell you.
You're being controlled by
Oop,
someone on
next one here.
Sardonicus. His deeds form the fabric of nightmares. His face, the face of Sardonicus, can be described only in the eyes of its beholders.
Sardonicus. He's this creepy looking Phantom of the Opera dude. Now here's William Castle talking about it.
That looks pretty badass, honestly. I like it.
In spite of all his cruelties, some people will think he deserves mercy. Others will feel that no punishment could be too severe. When you come to see Mr. Sardonicus, you will receive a ballot like this. At a certain point in the picture, you will vote thumbs up or thumbs down. His punishment will depend on the result of your vote.
Wow.
So, and he called it the punishment poll. So, you would, in the end, audiences would decide what would happen to this guy. Though there's no evidence, there's no evidence that there was a thumbs up ending. In sort of film archives of copies of this, there's only a thumbs down ending. So maybe there never was a thumbs up, and no matter what happened, they were always going to,
do the same one. Yeah.
Right? So, that's 1961, probably the first choose your own adventure movie. There in 1967, there was a really cool Czechoslovakian film called Kino Automat, which was a choose your own adventure film. And, I'll play it as I'm talking about it a little here. I'll mute it. We don't necessarily need to hear the volume. But these two things would pop up on the screen. And so audiences would be watching the film, and there would be a moderator along with it. So this film played at the World Expo in Montreal in 1967. And that might be the only place it played because it was kind of political. So it never really made it back. You can imagine, 1967, Czechoslovakia, Cold War shit. It wasn't gonna do well. So, but it did show at the Montreal 67 Expo. And so there was a moderator there, and at certain points in the film, audiences would choose, what to do, and they would have two projectors set up. And if they chose one path, the projectionist would stop that projector, put a cap over the lens, and then start the other projector. And then they would cue up the stop projector in preparation for what was going to happen next. And so they would go back and forth between these two projectors. So that was in 1967. So there's not very many films that experimented with choose your own adventure, but when the video format came out, there was. And that brings me to one of my favorite things that I'll show. But actually, one sort of footnote I should mention: in the world of video games, we probably all remember Dragon's Lair, right?
Yes,
that was another step in interactive storytelling and sort of choose your own adventure. I remember I worked at an arcade, and so I remember going as a kid and playing this. But like I would say, 75% of the time, the game was always broken down because something was up with the laser. It used laser discs inside.
Yeah.
And so it was like broken half the time, and you're slamming, you're button mashing away, and you're like, is this shit working or not? It was Dragon's Lair, and then they also produced Space Ace, if you remember Space Ace as well.
Yeah,
which was also pretty cool. So those were two video games that were sort of choose your own adventure narratives more than video games, I would say.
I played Dragon's Lair at Chuck E. Cheese. That was the first place I ever seen it.
Oh yeah, Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
I had a friend that worked at Chuck E. Cheese, and we would go when we were teenagers. He would get us free pizza all the time.
Yeah.
So those were very innovative, and because they were on Laserdisc and kind of the idea of video sort of made the concept viable. That home. Yes, Don Bluth. Yeah.
Don Bluth.
Yep. So the technology was tough in the cinema, but at home, with with the development of the VCR and things like that, there were experiments in home video. right? So I think I have a picture here, maybe not. Yes, of the Control Vision. This was a kind of like a, this used a tape like a pretty much like a VHS tape that you plug in, and you could control this like a video game, but they were choose your own adventure videos. And they had some of the some really what they specialize in genre stuff. There was like some horror, crime, but the most significant one, in my opinion, was one called Night Trap. Has anybody ever heard of the video game Night Trap, the Choose Your Own Adventure Night Trap? Essentially what it was is you are in it takes place in a sorority house. So it's like super 80s sexed out sorority house kind of thing. So as a player, you're observing a sleepover of a bunch of girls. Right. So it's like super sexy and stuff. And the house is infested by vampires who are trying to kill all these, nubile young hotties. And you play the game down here by interacting with cameras that are installed all throughout the house. And, you follow the story and listen in through these characters. So it's kind of like you're the sort of pervert who's watching a sleepover and watch all these girls get so what's funny is they were. Go ahead.
No, yeah. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Here's a clip from the movie because in 2017 they did a re-release, and here's a clip from the trailer of that. Oh.
We have a car. Your parents are gone, and you say so? Come on, Sarah. What's the first thing you think of? Party.
It's not a sorority house. It's just a sleepover.
What year was this, Bob?
What this originally? This was in I think 1987. Let me check the date again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, you could tell.
I'm sorry. Later, it was 1992.
Oh, okay. Well, not too far off, but still, yeah.
It was released as CD-ROMs late re-release. Oh, I'm sorry. The re-release was in 82. Originally, it was in the re-release was in 92 on Sega CD, if you remember that. Originally, it was
Sega CD, yeah.
Right. So I love Night Trap. Some other experiments was in 1994. There was another film released called I'm Your Man, this interactive film. That was not very successful. It was too expensive to launch in the theaters. Audiences would pick from 3 choices that would flash on the screen, and they had a controller that they would decide what the character would do. And they were color coded with green, yellow, and red.
Huh.
And so that was in 1994. Another attempt was Mr. Payback in 1995. People.
This is the city full of sleazeballs, jerks, and buttheads taking unfair advantage of their fellow man. But now there's someone to turn to who give them what they deserve. Just retribution, payback, Mr. Payback.
Mr. Payback.
He's Mr. Payback. He's part man, part cyborg, and 100%
part man, part cyborg.
I love that, man. Mr. Go Gadget.
Yeah, so you got these buttons in the seats.
See, I remember those. I never went to a theater, but I remember seeing something about that before.
The audience by hitting these color-coded buttons would decide what would do, but it was too expensive to install in theater, so it never took off. It wasn't until YouTube in the early after YouTube comes on that people start to figure out how to use YouTube for interactive by clicking on hotspots and videos. That kind of brings it back. Seemed like that was going to be. I remember when that happened. I was like, wow, this is really cool. It's going to maybe be a big thing, but it never really did in that context. But I didn't touch on interactive text games that played a big role. I'm sure you guys probably all remember, and here's another great part of our childhood, and this is an original, Zork, right? This is for Yeah, this is for Commodore 64. Before this was Cave of Adventure, which was a text-based game that kind of helped develop the choose your own adventure storytelling.
Yeah.
I still have the Commodore 64 disc. I have a working Commodore 64 too. I could actually.
That is freaking awesome, dude.
Another favorite of mine was Mind Wheel. This was a novel that came with a disc, and you would sort of read the novel and play the game online, and it was choose your own adventure. But Zork, it was Zork 1, 2, and 3 versions of that came out. And then, of course,
I can remember some movies coming out like on VHS, and you would have to like fast forward it to a certain thing or something. So if you,
there were other experiments like that
you would fast forward to this time frame or some BS thing like that.
And this, and what's interesting, this is in Philadelphia right now. It's called the 20-Sided Tavern, and this is a live choose your own adventure interactive sort of theatrical experience where
it's badass, man.
They're like these D&D players who also assume their characters, and the audience votes on how the story develops in this live setting. They do this in various cities, and right now it's in Philadelphia. It's called 20-Sided Tavern.
That would be friggin' awesome, dude.
Yeah,
that would be so much fun.
So needless to say, I've been a fan of choose your own adventure since I was a kid, and I thought to myself, how can I use this in my own work? And so I've made 2 interactive choose your own adventure documentaries. One is an autobiographical documentary called X9, and I made both of these things. I made for specific things. This was for a conference on new media. And so they were asking for people to make things. And so right at this time, I'll play this with the volume down so you can kind of see what it looks like. And it was, they were interested in autobiographical work. So the name of this is called X9, choose your own adventure. And I made this autobiographical documentary right after my father had passed away. And it's one of these things where like my dad and his mom passed away, and then all these family secrets had come out. And I don't think like my dad, his father was who he thought his father was. And so my last name probably really isn't Emmons. It's probably something else biologically, but my grandmother hid that, like one of these crazy family secrets. Yeah. So I made this documentary about, people and, and families and, how complicated families are, and finding out about your family history and what your name means and all that kind of shit. And in it, because for me, I'm not sure, my history or my path, this is like this weird digital 3D version of myself that I star as myself to kind of, I don't quite look real because it's a 3D version of me. Okay. And so at points and branches on this, you decide like where my story develops by picking a path and learn about sort of,
man, that is badass, Bobby. That is, man, it's so man.
And most recently I made a documentary called Palimpsest. And if you were to look at it, I don't know if it's too blown out because it's like a white screen. You probably can't see it.
Kind of white.
Yeah. Anyway, when you go into this documentary, it presents like it's the very first choose your own adventure graphic novel. It's actually the very first pages of Cave of Time, right? But the point of the film, like you're like, what do you mean it's a documentary? How is it a documentary? It's about, I used the choose your own adventure because it sort of is connected to childhood, because it's kind of a really heavy subject in the documentary. And because the documentary is about violence in America, particularly school violence. So, you think you're reading, it presents like you're reading this book. And then ultimately I sort of trace a history of like sort of childhood fear and violence, because I'm a child of the Cold War in the 80s. Yeah. And a big part of this is, I'm sure a lot of people too have seen that TV movie called The Day After. Do you remember that, Rich? Did you ever see that?
What was it again? The Day After?
Yeah, The Day After. It was a movie about if the Russians launched nuclear missiles at America, and what would America would look like the day after a nuclear attack.
I'm not sure.
It was a TV movie, and it was like really big. You know, I remember there was like news broadcasts about it beforehand. And it was like, if you're going to watch this with your family, you know, this is what, you know, this is the questions you should talk about.
Like warnings.
Yeah. And so I remember I wasn't allowed to watch it. My came out in 1983. So I was just 8 years old at that time. My mom and Nan were like, no, you're going to bed. You can't watch this. But I snuck and watched it from the top of the stairs because you could see our TV. And I was haunted. And I remember seeing like people like melting, you know, from nuclear war.
I probably did see it then.
Yeah,
I think
I slept under my bed for months after that, thinking the Russians were going to bomb us and kill us. And so I've always sort of been fascinated by like, you know, childhood fear. And so like that's kind of the launching point for the documentary. And I sort of traced, you know, I asked people in the film to kind of put themselves back in the place of, you know, being a kid and being scared and how we sort of deal with those issues nowadays in culture and in the media and stuff like that. So I'm almost done talking.
Oh,
I have
you're
one
right.
thing I want to show. And I had made mention, you know, unless you know, anybody else out there can point in the direction. I only know of, there's a graphic novel series that's for kids. I can't even remember the name. That's Choose Your Own Adventure. It wasn't until a couple of years ago, actually, what's the date on this? 3 years ago, 2022, this graphic novel came out. It's called 2120 because it's supposed to take place in the future. And it's a Choose Your Own Adventure graphic novel by this guy. He's a professor at Towson University. His name's George Wylisall. And some people might be familiar with his comics. They're totally crazy. Like
that cover looks crazy.
Jason, I think you would like this. Like he has this really kind of streamlined, interesting art, like very graphic, very almost like kind of like Chris Ware. But his stuff is really kind of psychedelic and wild. And you know, it's sort of like, I think people often describe it as like a liminal space horror film. You're a computer repair person who gets called to this office building to repair a computer, but you get trapped inside and you got to try to find your way out. And it just turns into this bizarre horror story as you try to discover and unfold what's happening.
That sounds awesome.
This is really the only true choose your own graphic novel that I know of. So if anybody can point one out to me, I'd be happy to hear.
It'd be really cool.
That was 49 minutes of me geeking out on Choose Your Own Adventure. So
hell yeah, man. Did they ever do did anybody ever try to do like a comic version? I'm sure they
I looked, I don't know, not that I know of. I thought surely there must be a serialized comic book version of Choose Your Own Adventure. There might be some experiments, but I don't think the brand had done it unless anybody else knows of it if they're writing that in the chat.
Well, it would probably be kind of hard to do in a short form. I mean, it would probably have to be like a novel, comic book or something.
It would have to be a graphic novel, right?
Yeah, like graphic novel or something. Yeah, but
and that 2120 is really the only one I know of.
And it's like dropping acid.
It is like dropping acid.
That would be awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's wild. It's crazy.
Yeah,
you got to be into weird shit.
I'm into weird shit, man. I love weird shit.
Speaking of, I should have pulled this out as a final thing to show. Speaking of weird shit, I just inherited my father-in-law has a full set of Zap comics. He just gave them all to me.
Wow.
So I'm thinking of doing one of my episodes about Zap comics, and I'll go.
Definitely, Bobby. You definitely should do that, man.
Talk about weird shit, right?
Yeah,
and they're in great condition. They're in really great condition.
Oh man, that'd be awesome, dude.
He's an old school hippie, and he was like, "I have these in my bed." He's like, "I didn't read that superhero shit, but I have these. Love Dark Crumb." So it's all the Zap comics.
But no, man, this has been a blast, Bobby, as always, dude. I love getting under the lemon tree and listening to you, man, and just let you geek out about whatever you want to geek out.
I appreciate it.
I definitely want you back on if you would be willing to come back on sometime for sure and geek out about something else. Because
one of the things maybe I'll sort of I wasn't sure if I was going to do a video about this or I was going to bring it on, not this here, but what I know I want to do something with. I'm sure everybody's familiar with David. One of my favorite comic book artists is probably David Mazzucchelli, and he has such an interesting career. If you look at the history of him as an artist and later artist writer, that I'm either going to do a video or maybe a Geeking Out if I don't do a video about his development as an artist. And actually, if Chanko was on here, which I really loved his Frank Miller video. I don't know if people got to see that, but if you haven't, you should check it out.
Yes.
Sort of a defense, because I sort of think the same way as he does. And you know, a lot of people are making fun of his work now, you know, and
it's
you know,
not right. It's not right. Yeah.
I mean, I guess they can do what they want, but also I would ask those people to sort of look at the context of him and look at what he's done for, you know, comic book history. But he's one of these guys who we watched his work develop towards a very distinct style that has really whittled its way down to like a very few lines. And I think that's a combination of his style and, as an old, not well man, what he can do, what he can put out now, right? But I do, the whole point of that is with me saying is I like to watch how artists develop over time. And some develop even better, and some for me have not. And we could get into a discussion, a controversial one, on Chris Basallo, or Bashallo, however you say his name, because I do not like how his work developed. And I'm sure many people on here do. But when he originally was drawing, like back in for like Sandman, Death, but particularly Shade the Changing Man, he was at his height. And then he just got too big-eyed, cartoony, sort of manga-esque for me. And I'm not a fan of his current work. I do appreciate, and you know, how he has evolved in his style.
Yeah, his art. Yeah, his art. Yeah.
But it hasn't been for me. With David Mazzucchelli, who we all know from Born Again and Batman Year One, his work before those was very different, and his work after those is very different. He has a really interesting career and has made what I think the greatest graphic novel, which I made a YouTube short about if anybody got to see that, called Asterius Polyp. And if you read that graphic novel, it looks nothing like, well, it barely resembles Batman Year One or, you know, Born Again. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's something I would do a video about or talk about in the future.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, like I said, either on this show or on me and Chanko's live show.
Oh yeah. That was great.
We'll get you on there again, man. We'll talk about anything on there too. So I know Chanko, he enjoys your company. And I swear, if I had had teachers like you in school, which, you know, I had maybe one or two that were like you, man. But if I had more teachers like you, I'd have definitely done a lot better in school. So
I remember when I saw Up and Adam, when he does some of his videos from his office at work. I think he works. Yeah. He works at a university too.
He's like a bank teller or something, man. I don't know. He's like.
I was like, oh my goodness, if I were a student who walked into your office, I would be like, all right, who's this guy? I need to know what this guy is
about. But yeah, we're going on an hour. That's about usually how we run it, how long we run it and stuff.
Yeah.
But Bobby, I cannot thank you enough, man. This has been very entertaining, very educational. Walk down memory lane, because when you mentioned something about it the other day, you know, it didn't really dawn on me what you were getting after or whatever. And but yeah, that brought back a lot of memories, man. I can definitely remember going to the library and checking those books out and reading them and stuff. And they were the ones that I enjoyed to read, you know. And I wished I could remember which ones I had read. And because books like that, man, that's why comics were so big on me too. Because at a younger age, I could read comics, but if I had to sit down and read something, if it didn't grab my attention, man, my brain just wanted to go elsewhere, so.
I know. I was not a great reader as a kid, except for this kind of stuff that was engaging, right?
Right. Very engaging. Very engaging. But
I mean, I appreciate you letting me, talk about it. Hopefully it wasn't too lectury or boring for
man, no, not at all, buddy. It was, like I said, very very educational, very entertaining, man. Just exactly what I've started this stream show, whatever you want to call it. It's really the whole point of it is to let anybody geek out about whatever they wanted to, and hopefully it's stuff that I don't know about, because then it educates me, which I like. I like being educated that way, of other people's interests.
It's a great idea. I always think to myself, like, I'm a huge podcast listener and stuff, and I'm always like, man, I can never come up with a good idea. This is a freaking great idea for a YouTube show, because what's awesome about it is it's kind of a surprise, right? Like, you're going to go on and see who's on and be surprised by what they show. Like, I had no idea like Jason was going to talk about that, but as soon as he saw it and I'm watching it, I was like, oh, Dylan Dog, which is a comic I'm a fan, like, and so it was kind of a surprise to see, which is super fun, and it's a great idea for a show. So I applaud you on that.
And Jason, here another week goes by and nobody gave me homework. He gets upset. What? They didn't give you homework? They're supposed to give you homework.
Well, I knew I was going to pull you into the story right away. So I was like, should I make them read a whole Choose Your Own Adventure book? I was like, nah, I'll let them make a choice path. And I'm glad you chose the choice you did. I wanted you to die right away. If we would have went the other way, it would have been a few pages and you maybe would have lived.
I started to ask you, is there a choice where I kick the girl out of the tree?
And she gets eaten and you run away. That's like the old line. Like, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than the slowest guy in your group.
I kicked her out of the tree, waited a second, then took off.
Yeah.
But do you got anything you want to promote or anything? It's not the end of the month yet.
I have a video, which I do my videos monthly.
Yes.
Because this one will be out hopefully earlier. Well, actually, you know what? No, even though it will be done earlier, I'm not releasing it until it actually has a Halloween theme. So it'll be out on October 30th, because the show has a relationship to that. And if anybody knows their history, particularly radio history, then October 30th might mean something to you. And that's what the episode has to do about. So I'm releasing it on what will be an anniversary of this incident. And it's a Halloween episode. So that'll be on Sequential Art. You can check that out.
I can't wait, buddy. Like I said, I enjoy the shit out of your videos, man. I look forward to them, and once you get your 12th episode done, I hope you continue to do them even after. I know you said it was like a year type project or
I've been thinking of a kind of a new way to sort of make very small versions, because they're so labor intensive, and how to do, because people seem to like it. And it's like, at first, like, you're hoping like a lot of people watch, and then like it's hard to tell, like, a few hundred people watch, to like my Marvel graphic novel one, it's like 3,000 people or whatever watched. And I tried to make one about Fantastic Four when the movie came out, because I thought that would be popular, and like 300 people watched. You don't know what's going to break through. But then I realized, and my wife said to me, well, who are you making this for? I said, well, I've actually met a really awesome community of people that are into this, who are all sharing all kinds of stuff. And she's like, well, then who gives a shit if 1,000 people watch it? If like the 50 people that you are part of this community with get something out of it, then make it for that. And I was like, well, I guess that's why she's smarter than me. Right?
I know your video count had to have went up once we met, because I've watched all your videos. I don't know how many times, man. There's a couple of them there I've watched several times.
Thank you. I appreciate. And you and Chaco actually were talked about me, had me on from the start. And comics are dope. Gosh, he reposted one of my things, and that really That's why I
awesome.
had to shout. I had to sort of feature him in the last one because I call his channel the Reading Rainbow of Comics. I could listen to his voice for hours.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I really appreciate everyone watching and sharing, and appreciate being part of all this. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's like I said, just keep it up, man. I love them. Love it, love it, love it.
Great.
But with that, say thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks for coming and hanging out on a Wednesday for an hour and geeking out. Let's see. My next guest is going to be Matt. Matt likes comics. He's going to be my next geeking out guest. Don't know exactly. I really haven't talked to him to see what he was going to geek out about, but like the norm, I've grown to not tell people. I want people to tune in and then figure out what we're geeking out about.
I'm going to take a guess. Matt's going to geek out about Supergirl.
Yeah, I was going to say DC Comics.
Yeah, he's done. And I told him, I was one of the ones when he was like, should I do something about Supergirl the movie? And I was like, do something about Supergirl the movie. And eventually he did. I see Chonko in the thing called me Bubby by accident, but what he doesn't know is actually my nickname. All my children and my wife, my nickname is Bub. So
Bub.
I get called that sometimes. So my family nickname is Bub. So it's funny.
That's awesome.
But I'll stop talking.
That's all right, man. It's all right. All good.
Will these comments be preserved, Rich? I wanted to look through them real quick, or did they end as soon as you go off? The comments over here. Will they be gone?
The comments. When we're backstage, I think you can scroll through them.
Okay, cool.
But all right, guys. With that, we are going to get off here and enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you Saturday with somebody. We had a change of guests, so we're still hashing out who we're going to get on. So we'll let you know. But all right, with that, guys, we will see you soon. Peace.